And the gentleman in the corner could turn my mic on, which I think he does. I don't have a quiz, unfortunately. So I'm going to be talking about digital transformation. So digital ecosystem is changing the way in which science is done. So quick survey, quick hands up. How many people have got one of these in their pocket at the moment? I don't quite believe that number. I think everybody's got one of these in their pocket. And these things are changing the way in which we live our social lives. So whether it's Facebook, we're talking to friends, whether it's Amazon, buying things online, whether it's doing your grocery shopping, everything this day and age is done with a mobile phone. And science is going down exactly the same route. That same digital transformation is happening right now at this point in time. So if we look at the history of the Industrial Revolution, so back in the 1800s, when we got rid of the horse, we found coal and steam, and we drove mechanical power. We improved our lives. Then to the 20th century, mass production. Automation in the 1970s. So if you walk into any car production plant in the 1970s, you start seeing one or two robotic arms such as this. Now, if you walk into a reputable car manufacturer these days, so Rover, Leyland, good old British, no one familiar with Rover and Leyland? Okay, Germany, what's a good car manufacturer in Germany? Oh, sorry, that's right, there are none. No, Audi, BMW. Frank's speaking later and he will get his own back, I'm quite sure. But within those production plants, there's a plethora of automation going on there. So much so, it's actually displaced humans. And then in the last 5, perhaps 10 years, the digital transformation has come upon us. But why is it important? So, marketing company asked this question: how significant will the impact of digital disruption be on your industry? When I first looked at this about a year back, I thought, what's digital disruption? So to give you an example, Blockbuster video. So Blockbuster, hopefully that translates across different communities here. VHS, tapes, CDs, you go into a shop, see the film you want, and then you rent it out. So you're physically traveling to a shop. Well, Netflix came along and said, we don't think that's a good idea. We'll offer a streaming service with a monthly subscription. And now we're a Blockbuster. They no longer exist. Toys R Us, another classic example of digital disruption. So back in the day when my children were young, we'd go down to Toys R Us. I'd send them in there for about 2 hours. I'd go off down to the pub. Different buying pattern now. Kids go online, and they go online to Amazon, places like that. They're actually purchasing, and Toys R Us said one of the reasons for going out of business is because of companies like Amazon. They have a different business model. They have a different relationship model with their clients. Different taxation model, you know, where Toys R Us have physical shops where they have to pay rental for those shops. There's a different financial model behind the back of that. So back in 2015, when surveyed, people reckoned the digital disruption, the vast majority of them reckon this is not going to be a problem. You scale that up now to 2017, about 31% of people think there's going to be issues around digital transformation. And the stats bear out that about 4 out of 10 of any incumbent within any industry will be out of business in 5 years. So when you think about those figures, this isn't the key to going forward in science, it's absolute table stakes. This is really vital that everyone in this room adopts the digital transformation that's happening in society and in science in general. Fortunately, we're well positioned, uniquely positioned to help drive that transformation. If you look at the implementations and the R&D spend that we place every year, around about just less than $1 billion worth of R&D spend, that's driving a lot of things like connected instrumentation. So we have 2,100 instruments actually connected out there, talking via the cloud, the Thermo Fisher cloud, transacting against the cloud, sharing data, asset management data. If you go onto the websites themselves, about 1.5 million units available so you can purchase directly off those websites across any one of around about 240 different countries across the globe. What we're looking to do is to drive your scientific acceleration, your productivity in the laboratories. Labs are no longer individual silos of data. When I first came to the business some 20 years back, labs kept their data controlled within the laboratory. It was precious to them. Sharing and collaboration now is key. If you think about what we do within informatics, informatics solutions in digital science, we take a sample, convert it to data, and from that data, companies react upon the knowledge behind that information. We have elements such as smart instruments, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. Smart consumables. So when I take a consumable out of a fridge or a freezer, we automatically know that that consumable has been utilized, really streamlining the whole procurement process. And then wrap that round with world-class services, we can certainly assist in driving your scientific acceleration. To assist in the portfolio, we've put together this 8-segment wheel. I'll talk through one or two of the aspects of this so you get a feeling for what we're offering as an organization. Now, this just isn't digital sciences. This is across the breadth of Thermo Fisher Scientific. Again, all designed to drive your productivity on a daily basis. And whether you're sat in the audience thinking, well, you know, I'm an IT director or I work in procurement, I'm not working in labs, how does this affect me? There's aspects of this wheel that will touch your everyday life. And should do, because you're part and parcel of the value chain that your organization has. So whether you're a scientist, a lab manager, working procurement, IT looking for information, knowledge information, or an IT manager struggling to think how you will host the plethora of IT systems that you have, we have a solution for this. And when we look at those IT challenges, I was with a company last week, executive meeting in there, and the CIO said, look, Bob, we've got a real problem. We've got about 230 different laboratories across the globe. So, well, how many IT systems have you got there? How many IT systems do you manage? And he said, over 1,000. Over 1,000 servers, blades, racks, with all the maintenance, the upgrading, software updates, patches. We have a solution, a very strong solution for you to aid you in that digital transformation. Okay, so lab data and processes. This is the part that is dear to our hearts. This is really about the digital science informatics piece. As most of you will know, we have a range of applications through from research and development all the way up to scale up and manufacturing. So on the R&D side, rapid deployment, flexible architectures, cloud-first mentality. Again, you know, when you look within your own organizations, a lot of you may be actually assigning digital integration officers. They'll be looking particularly for cloud-first capability. And when I talk to my customers out there, a lot of them are saying, forget about anything else, I just want this on the cloud. Almost to a point at which they're forgetting about functionality. Well, the great news is we've got cloud-first as an approach, as well as having great depth of functionality behind the back of that. Then all the way through to our manufacturing DMPK products such as Watson and Sample Manager. Frank Wall from Covestro is going to talk about how they've rolled out Sample Manager across the Covestro ecosphere and how that's driven efficiencies and productivity. If we look at the component parts, and apologies for the acronyms, there's always acronyms in this field of science. So I have ELN, Electronic Lab Notebook, to two elements, two flavors, if you like here. Research ELN, designed to handle the complexity of workflows and the inherent everyday change mentality that's in an R&D lab, all the way through to procedural ELN, LES, lab execution systems, where you can take your paper-driven SOP and map that into the system. Well, why is that a good idea? Because some of the biggest challenges we see out there at the moment are around compliance and data integrity. Being able to prove that you've followed an SOP in an electronic fashion, you can assure an auditor that you've followed, firstly, the method, but secondly, you haven't used an instrument that's been out of calibration, you haven't used a reagent that has expired, and drive that whole data integrity piece, which is becoming more and more prevalent. And if you haven't heard about DI, data integrity, just yet, I advise go away, read up on that subject matter, because whether you work in pharmaceutical or petrochemical, data integrity is really going to be very, very important to your businesses. We have LIMS in terms of bioanalytical, Watson LIMS. The top 20 pharmaceutical companies all use and have standardized on Watson. Then the other piece to the jigsaw here is SDMS, Scientific Data Management. This is all about not just taking the results associated with samples, but also all the spectral data for a compliance point of view. So what's behind the back of that result? But spectral data isn't sufficient either. We also have to take all the metadata, all the experimental data along with us. If we're going to get audited, the auditor needs to know what was the column used in that chromatography, what was the gradient, what was the mobile phase used, who made that phase up, were they trained correctly, had it expired? That kind of information is metadata. We now have a methodology for bringing that metadata, the spectral data, and the test results all together. Moving on into the world of collaboration and community, as I said before, it's fair to say that we all need to share data much more readily, not only within our own company, but also with partner organizations such as CROs. To enable you to do this, powered by Thermo Fisher Cloud, which is based on Amazon Web Services, we have the capability to share documents, DocConnect, and another application called PeerConnect. These allow you to build up electronic documentation in the web, as well as being able to share, edit, and review. It's like documentation, document management in the web, if you like. Scientific content. If you're struggling with a Thermo Fisher application or a product, the first point to go to is probably the plethora of websites that we have. So Pete Nelson, who runs our EMEA Services support team, Pete will tell you the first thing to go to in terms of knowledge base, or you need information about Sample Manager or Watson, go to the support website. There's a whole raft of information there on the manuals, releases, installation guides, etc. But there's more than this. Within the organization, we're now developing a lot of method apps. So if you're struggling as a scientist to understand a method and see what the best method is for sensitivity of a certain chemical element, then go to the analysis website, the app website. And we're also very strong on e-learning as well. So if you want to drive professional training across your organization, e-learning is often the best and most efficient way and cost-effective way in which to do that. As I said before, this isn't just about the scientists. If we now look at inventory management and how we streamline the whole procurement process, we've got a range of approaches from actually Thermo Fisher installing a storeroom on your site with Thermo Fisher goods on board, through to self-web ordering, on-site kiosks, where as a scientist I can walk up to a screen and actually place an order directly, and down to intelligent vending. And this is really exciting. In launch last year, we actually had a fridge out at the side, and you open the door, pull out a bottle of reagent, and instantly that reagent is reordered. RFID tag knows when you've crossed the threshold of the fridge and is ordering automatically for you. Now, it sounds a little bit scary. And a lot of the time when procurement people, and we're talking to them about this, they say, well, hold on a second, what about the approvals process? Well, we can automate all that as well. But again, you've got to control as much around this as you require. Within the laboratory, everybody has instrumentation. Hopefully, the majority of that instrumentation will be with Thermo Fisher Scientific, but we appreciate we live in a competitive world, so we also have competitor equipment in there as well. We can manage those assets, again, remotely via the web, as well as being able to do remote servicing and diagnostics. And if you think about, I know we have some team in from Norway Biobank in here. If you think about a biobank, its most precious commodity is its set of specimens, its set of samples, sat there either in a fridge or a freezer. Now, what happens if that freezer fails? Well, if that happens over the weekend, I lose all my samples, I lose all my specimens. And we've seen this actually with clients about 5 or 6 years ago. You lost tens of thousands of dollars of specimens. Now, if you can drive predictive analytics around this and understand when that fridge or freezer is going to fail because the pump's starting to wear, we're now in a position where Thermo Fisher can come in 3 weeks before that pump fails and actually fix that. So the engineer turns up on site. Hi, Bill, how you doing? Didn't know you were in today. Yep, come to fix your pump on your freezer before it fails. Those predictive analytics are happening out there. In order for that to happen, we have to have these instruments connected into the web. But if you think about the assets that sit on your site, we need to drive value from the scientific data as well as the asset management data. So the real-time diagnostics, telemetric data, which we can start to collect, as well as real-time analysis. And how are we addressing this? Second slide in, so we do a large investment, just shy of $1 billion a year in instrumentation. Most of the instruments we're producing now have got direct connectivity already into Thermo Fisher Cloud. So these smart devices, so you'll start to see them as the upgrades come in place, that chip is upgraded, updated, so we can get this communication. For some of the old equipment, see the center here, the 3500 genetic analyzer, and examples such as, most equipment that we also sell is connected into an instrument, into a PC. So you can connect that PC directly to the web. And then for some of the more simple instrumentation, such as the fridges, the freezers, etc., which classically you wouldn't imagine would ever need to communicate into the web, we can connect those via Device Link Hub. What does this mean to me as a scientist? Well, firstly, once you've got all your data centralized, and this is very important, whether you're working in the laboratory or you're working as a chief executive, to make decisions, you've got to centralize your data. And that's a big challenge to a lot of the organizations that we work for. How do you get all this data into one single point? Well, if your instruments are natively talking into the web, such as ours are, you can do things like checking availability. I can see what instruments have been calibrated. I can see what instruments have been serviced and what's available for me to use as a scientist. I can also monitor my run data. So if you're sad like me, you want to work from home as a scientist, I can run a qPCR experiment, go home, and actually see that progressing, see that running, and if I wish to do so, even do some analysis remotely as well. So this concept of walking into your lab to check on an instrument, those days are going. So being able to access this from any device, any time, any point on the planet, that's where we're leading scientific communities such as yourselves to that point. And then the last thing, of course, I want to schedule that instrument because my PCR run from the analysis didn't work as quite the way I wanted it to, so I want to schedule it for first thing tomorrow morning. I can do that. I've got that accessibility, I've got that flexibility to work in the way in which I work. Final aspect of the 8-point wheel, security. So a customer came to me the other week and we're just about to sign a contract and said to me, Bob, well, look, you talk about web first, 100% web first. Do we still have on-premise options? Absolutely, of course we do. Lots of our customers out there on-premise, we're not removing that, no plans to do that. But how secure is Amazon Web Services? So I turned it around to him and said, right, okay, how big's your IT department? This is a large pharmaceutical company. He said, well, about 10 people. I said, how many of those people are dedicated to IT security? He sat there and thought for a second and went, dedicated? Oh, about 1.5. No, actually thinking about it again, about half a person dedicated on a full-time basis. I said, well, how many people do you think work in Amazon who are dedicated towards the security of your data? And he got it. Now, you've heard of lots of stories. BA have been hacked recently. LabCorp recently lost some clinical data and around about 14,000 patient records. This is extremely critical that if you go to a web platform, that data is highly secure. This is why we've partnered with Amazon. So from a data encryption point of view, 256-bit data encryption. And all the standards that are deployed by organizations such as the FDA and the Center for Disease Control. We have firewalls, which will essentially segregate your data. So it's essentially a virtual network. We do scheduled audits. So it's all right us saying here, yes, everything's secure. we actually do hacking audits where people try to hack into the system just to make sure that the procedures in place are robust enough to support and secure your data. Of course, all the data is backed up, recoverable, and because, again, we'll make the point of this for the next 2 days or so, because your data is in one central point, you can share that information, you can act upon that data. But again, that data sharing has to be controlled by you. And with AWS, it absolutely is. So that's a very quick synopsis. As you can see from this wheel, there's lots more different touch points around our digital scientific program. I'm more than happy to talk to you more in depth offline on this. Well, we talked before about it doesn't really matter what persona you are. So if you're an executive and you want to get insights and intelligence and drive operational efficiency, having that data together in one single point enables you to do that. IT, this really simplifies your whole IT infrastructure. By taking everything into the cloud, it removes hardware cost, initial layout, the maintenance cost, the support, the upgrades. But of course, said before, you want to stay on premise, that's fine. The world, though, is changing towards this cloud-based vision. For procurement, we have smart consumables, as well as interconnectivity to business systems such as SAP, PeopleSoft. We can automate the procure-to-pay cycle if you wish to do so. We can make that easier, so in the laboratory, I never run out of reagents again, but neither do I have 2 months' worth of reagents sat there as dead stock, which is costing my organization money. That just-in-time approach to ordering your reagents, that's more than possible. Think about collaboration, how we share that data. Again, lots of reporting tools out there, but bringing all this data together aids that. And then as a scientist in the laboratory, lots of applications, workflows to help drive your productivity. And you think about where we go from sample into data into knowledge, that's what we do. Our software does that for you, but that's what you do on a daily basis if you're working into a lab, releasing data into knowledge. So informatics and digital science will shape the lab of the future. I implore you to review this and think about how you're going to adapt to that change and not become the next blockbuster. And I'm sure you won't. All very bright, intelligent people in the room. We can certainly help you down the pathway of that transformation. I'd like to say a very large thank you to the following couple of gentlemen. Christian Wolf from Bayer. So Christian's going to be coming on just after me here and talking from the future to reality. I love that title. They have their FEL project, which is the future environment for the lab domain within Germany, within Bayer Healthcare. And then Frank from Covestro is going to talk about how they've taken Sample Manager and really drove that as the global standard across their organization. Thank you for your time.